let's jump into chapter 9, testing our API back end. So back end API. So this is the endpoint where we retrieve all the movies from our API endpoint. So like here, when I access the URL endpoint, I get all the movies and the details of the movies. To test different API requests, the book here uses Insomnia, but we went ahead and installed Postman. So Postman here is where we test our API requests and see if they actually work. Whether it's get request, post request, put, patch, delete, and all, and so on. So yeah, what is Postman? What is the purpose of it? Well, it's a free tool that developers use to test and work with APIs. So the main idea of it is to test APIs, and it allows us to easily send requests such as get, post, put, delete to a server and view the responses after that. Then it also helps to check if your backend or API is working correctly without needing to write extra code. So you don't even have to write extra code to check if the backend or the API is working correctly. Just need to make those requests in our Postman. So for example, basically sending this request over here in Postman will successfully fetch movies from the server. So let's see how that works. So over here, here's our Postman. I've chosen here. So firstly, I created this environment called college, and I want to make a get request right to the server, and I'm making it to this API endpoint over here. Our main idea is to retrieve all the movies. Alright, so basically when I put the correct URL endpoint, localhost 5000 /API /v1 /movies. Let's have a look why I put that. So that is our endpoint to retrieve the specific movies. So over here, right? This over here, app.use, when a request is made to this API endpoint, what happens is this movie's route is what handles that request. That movie's route that we imported comes from API movies route.js. So movies route.js has those routes that handle the request. So the request that we're making in our Postman is basically a get request. That get request, right, triggers this movies controller. Movies controller has the API get movies function that gets called when we make that request. So when we go to API get movies in our movies controller, in the previous chapter I basically explained what get movies function in this controller does. So it just retrieves all 20 of the movies that we need. If you don't want 20 movies, you can choose the amount of movies you want and place that within your URL by placing the movies per page within it. But basically that's the function that basically handles that request, which basically comes from, which is triggered here by this get request route over here. So when I make that request and I press send, then it fetches all those movies because of the functions that handle that request. And you can see all the movies fetched here in JSON format. So movies, and it shows there's one movie and it goes on all the way to 20 movies. those were all fetched from my database over here in my movies collection. So basically, in my movies collection, that's where they were fetched. So mainly because of this, we connected to dot collection movies, and that's what allows us to make the request to the movies collection in order to retrieve that data. So that's the first testing we did. Then we went ahead to make a post request. I made a post request with the intention of adding reviews to our database, right? So adding reviews to our database, to our reviews collection. So reviews for each movie. So in order to do that, we need to add on to this URL endpoint in order for it to access the database. The API endpoint and the specific reviews that we want to get. The specific reviews that we want to post and add to our database. So first thing I did was came here to into reviews. Came to movies route.js to go find the route that handles that specific post request that we want to make. So here's the post request that we want to make, post, and when that post request is made, we need to make a post request to add specific reviews. So we go here /review, which is what we get here from the route. That's the actual route that we need to make the post request to. Then when that post request is made, what happens is reviews controller is triggered, API post review function is called, that comes from our reviews controller within our controller.js, which is over here. So what happens is the API post review function is called, and it makes that post, it handles the post request that we're making to the URL endpoint, so we can add the review to the database. So as you can see over here, it gets info from the REQ body. Within it, that's where we put /review. Then here the review, and it basically here, this is the JSON format showing the movie, the user's information, the review, as well as the date, in order to add a specific review. So then when we make that request in our postman, basically we wanna add the actual data that we wanna post, or the actual JSON formatted data that we wanna add to our database. So let me get that. So usually, like as I was explaining, the formatted data will be in this format where it shows the movie ID, user's information, review, as well as the date. And when we add that to our postman over here and make that request, right, and send that request, then it says status is successful. That means the post request is successful and the review is added to our database. So if I refresh here, then we can see the actual review that we added because of that post request that we made. So that's basically how the testing within postman is done in order to test our API get and post requests.